The work in the new garden went forward. In front of and around the basin, there was a circular walk which was furnished with benches of turf. The wall and the basin were separated by a walk 4 feet broad. This walk ran around the garden besides the fence and the arbor. All the part around the basin was planted with peach trees, acacias, willows, and other trees, among which were shrubs, sweet-smelling plants, and many strawberry plants. From one end of the turf wall to the other, they made in a symmetrical line a bank of turf which served to support the earth contained in the semicircle. A walk 4 feet broad, which ran beside it, was divided by a stream of water 2 feet broad, over which a bridge was built, also 2 feet long. This canal was filled with water by a trench through which ran the overflow of the basin. The emperor wished to have some shade in his walk at once and had some oaks transplanted there, of fairly good size, which he had planted at intervals along the bank. But these trees died at the end of a fortnight, in spite of the precaution which had been taken to leave a large lump of earth at their feet, which was liberally watered every day. It was necessary to place them with peach trees. These did not suffer from transplanting. Near this walk between the canal and the walk which ran along the fence on the east, there was a pretty little oak which had not been transplanted. At the foot of this, the emperor had a place arranged on the north side, large enough to hold a table and several chairs. He often took breakfast at this spot, which he liked. As soon as the small hydraulic operations were ended, every day about sunset, the emperor, who would be in his gardens at that time, would say to one of his valets, "Come, let us make the fountains play." The valets would go and turn the principal stopcock as well as the secondary ones, and the water would run from the basins into the trenches. In order to enjoy this pleasure, which one might call infantile, the emperor would stand between the basin at the fence and the grotto, and would watch the water run down to reach there. The noise and movement would amuse him for a few moments. He would laugh at himself for being amused by so little. The sport ended when there was no more water in the reservoir. Unfortunately, it happened quite often, especially in the dry season, that there was only just enough water in the reservoir for the needs of the house. There always was water at Longwood, but in the dry season, this summer, in that part of the world, it had to be sparingly used. Diana Peak was less covered with clouds. The springs were low. And that one, which gave us drinking water, also supplied the camp. It sometimes happened that when the stopcock at the camp was open, Longwood could not have any water, especially when there was any unusual expenditure of it. The emperor often emptied his basins, but always wanted to see them full when the garden was finished. The emperor wished to have a second one on the opposite side, that is to say on the west, besides Marched's garden, as the other was alongside the grove. Outside of the fences on the west and north, a border 4 feet wide was marked out, and a little wall of turf was made, such as I have spoken of above. In the circular border up to the western end of the turf wall, they planted peach trees in sufficient quantities to form a curtain, so as to shut off from the guardhouse being seen from Longwood. When they had dug the large basin in Novarez's garden, that in which the fish had been put, they had injured and even cut through the principal root of a pine tree. This tree had dried up, being deprived of the sources of life. To fill its place, emperor had a Chinaman make a large cage or aviary of bamboo with a sort of bird on top, which the Chinaman said was an eagle. And the emperor had several canaries brought to people it. These birds stayed for a month or two in their little cage hung in the arbor, waiting for the aviary to be finished. They were given everything every day that they needed to live, but they were taken with disease from which they nearly all died by degrees. The few that remained became the prey of the cats. Ultimately, when the aviary was finished and in place, the first inhabitants were a lame pheasant, some chickens. In order not to lose the latter, they had to be taken out of the cage after a few days. As for the unfortunate pheasant, he ended his days in prison. Then it occurred to the emperor to put some pigeons in the cage. They kept the new inhabitants shut up for a few days, but as soon as their door was opened, they all went back to their old home. The cage remained without birds, as the basin did without fish. All this work, which the emperor made us do, was extremely trying to us who had never handled a pickaxe, a shovel, or a spade, or pushed a wheelbarrow. When we came in from work, our breeches, our stockings, our shirts, our waistcoats were all wringing wet, and our faces were covered with sweat and dirt. We often said the emperor would kill us if he had the idea of making another garden. When he was present, we all worked as hard as we could. We did not spare ourselves, and went at it soul and body. There were no laggards. We never stopped from 5 or 6 in the morning, but as soon as the emperor had given the signal to stop work, each of us made haste to wash his face and hands and to go and sit down at the table. As we were people with good appetites, we were as active in masticating our food as we had been in digging up the earth. It was after restoring our strength that we went to make a complete toilet, out of which we all stood in great need. Never had long been so animated as it was while we were working in these gardens. The activity seemed to have revived us. Before we had lived in a sort of torpor. Never since we had been at St. Helena had the emperor been better. Consequently, he was always in good humor. He rose at 5 or 1:30, and waited very patiently till the sentries had been withdrawn to go to the garden. He had the windows of his apartments open and went to walk in the grove, talking with the valet on duty. As soon as the sun appeared on the horizon, he would have everybody waked up. When I was not on duty, he would call me by throwing little lumps of earth against the windows of my room, which opened on the grove. Ellie, you sleep! And singing, you will sleep more comfortably when you have gone in again.